There's an entire subgenre of games out there that revolve around the concept of being hunted and constantly overpowered. Alien Isolation is a standout example within this insane concept, while at the same time, it even breaks the mold from what you might expect from a game that's based on a movie. In this game, you play as the daughter of Ellen Ripley, the main character from the movie franchise. The story's set further into the future. You have a goal of investigating what happened and attempting to recover the black box of the ship. But of course, nobody knows what really went down out there. In a way, this lets you discover everything for the first time through flashbacks and messages along the way. The story, however, only serves to create a basic premise, because we know what happened. It's not really a mystery to the player. Chances are, you've seen the movies. The developers did all this so we can drop another Ripley into space, and we have the creative freedom to build from there. In doing so, they also managed to add in a ton of lore, tacking onto some of the existing ideas and expanding outward. Robots known as Working Joes were a notable example of this, and something that would come as maybe more of a surprise to someone very familiar with the movies. These lovable androids work correctly for about 15 minutes before they go Skynet on you. That said, they're creepier than they are dangerous, and Ripley comes prepared with their biggest weakness, a light jog. Exploring the ship becomes a matter of accessing new tools. In Metroidvania fashion, getting your hands on a maintenance jack, for example, now lets you through those pesky jacked up doors you noticed when you were first exploring around. There's a number of tools that range from physical to electronic, cutting, cranking, and hacking. I should also mention that each type of tool has a unique series of keystrokes involved to actually get the job done. This might initially look like a QuickTime event with everything except hacking. There's no element of timing here, and you can't really fail due to time in most cases. That said, the pressure isn't exactly off. Each of these things will leave you exposed and cause you to make noise, and you really want to be quiet. Why stay quiet? Well, most things that might hear you on this ship are extremely interested in killing you. Despite the name, you're not very isolated at all. There's actually a range of enemies here. You'll have to deal with human scavengers, insane robots, and of course, aliens. They aren't exactly allied with each other, which you can use to your advantage, but they're all very universally anti-Ripley. The game is divided into storyline sections, which does turn on and off certain enemy types depending on the current situation, but it's very rarely everything at once. But most of the time you'll have something out there hunting for you. There's no true safe zones, and even the save checkpoints themselves take 3 additional seconds that might get you noticed and killed. The AI for hunting in this game is really genuinely impressive. You have to immerse yourself with directional sound and headphones for this one if you really want the full experience, because knowing where your enemies are is crucial. The idea is to move slowly, carefully, be observant. If you actually see the alien, it's already too late in most cases. Enemies will pick up on just about any type of sound, and in many cases they'll rush right towards it. This really creates an interesting situation as you progress and gain access to a number of different tools and weapons, each seemingly noisier than the last, and you have to weigh the potential risk of using anything from your inventory to solve an issue. There's not a wild overabundance of areas requiring the cutting torch, but the time that it takes to get the job done feels amplified by the fact that you can die at any second. Another consideration you need to make is that not all your weapons will be effective against all enemy types. Some combinations are useless, ammo is in short supply. Still, just having these options instead of being forced to just run and hide all the time opens up some gameplay and makes things slightly more fair. Adding a revolver into this game, though, felt like a clever joke. It's loud as hell, and it's not very often there's a wise moment to use it. Because of the inclusion of these tools and weapons, progression through the game is easier in some regards as time goes on, which is comparatively different from other games in this genre. In my experience, other atmospheric horror titles like Amnesia: The Dark Descent or Outlast tend to get increasingly challenging until they end. Alien, on the other hand, eventually gives you decent weapon options like a flamethrower or a shotgun, and the game changes from primarily running and hiding to more of a stealth game with action sequences. While the experience towards the end of the game is a departure from the feeling at the beginning, it's not a jarring change. The story lets the gameplay grow naturally more aggressive as the stakes get higher. While I don't think it's actually possible to kill one of the aliens, blasting them with flames forces them away for a very short time. A very short time before they come after you with a vengeance. That said, flamethrower fuel is rare stuff. It's not something you want to run out of when you need it. Towards the tail end of the game, when you're able to use it more liberally, it's more of an expectation rather than an option. When it comes to being hunted, I loved when I found that enemies really seemed to travel and do their own thing from save to save. I never felt like hunters were on routes that I had to just learn and time correctly like a traditional stealth game. Instead, it always felt more like a genuine hunt. To survive when cornered, you had to either wait for the moment to press your luck or try to create a distraction while you get away. As the game reminds you, hiding is only ever a temporary solution. Death can come very quick and it'll take you back to a save. So I'd recommend you really do save often to avoid a rage quit. As a result of the enemies moving around differently every time, and the abundance of possible save locations, there's areas of the game that feel like they might be potentially skipped over, in a sense, because the danger may or may not always be there. The alien especially, he really seemed to get around. The level design is a bit repetitive in some areas, but there's often a variety of possible approaches to handling each situation. Most missions simply equate to getting a new target on the map to move toward, but there's going to be a number of challenges and puzzles in your way. As you try to figure it out, the ship has a spiderweb of ventilation systems to crawl through, desks to hide underneath, lockers to cower in, and dark corners where you can hold your breath and hope. The crafting system, while not my favorite form of UI control, does offer fairly quick access to building up alternative tools like noisemakers, EMP bombs, and other fun stuff if you want to play a little bit more aggressively. I feel like the number of steps required to put things together, the component-based system and how it all comes together, it may have sounded great on paper, but it's not great in application. Once you have the blueprint to craft something, an auto-craft option, if you had the components, would have been a bit better in my opinion. And this is one of the few gripes I did have about my experience with the game. Crafting items this way simply required a lot more downtime and upkeep, unfortunately taking away from the immersion without offering much in return. Getting maxed out on any type of crafting item typically prompted me to stop what I was doing and try to craft so I wouldn't leave things go to waste, one of the few things I didn't really look forward to in the game. And yes, that's partially my fault for being a degenerate hoarder, but this is survival. The animations, especially the death animations surrounding each time the alien manages to catch up to you, they are terrifying and they're noteworthy. The constant cat and mouse game gets a little easier to understand when you understand your hunter, but you'll never really outmatch this foe. The alien is a perfect hunter. Alien Isolation does a fantastic job of making you feel helpless and very lucky to escape. The music, the graphics, sound effects, everything was fine-tuned, and it shows. The music volume and intensity ebbs and flows with the level of danger that you're in. And as you try your luck hiding in a locker, hoping nothing heard or saw you crawl your way in, the carefully crafted sounds are sometimes the only hint you have to how much danger you're actually in. There's very few games that can create this level of immersion. While I wouldn't exactly call this experience fun in a classic sense, it does genuinely create a sense of dread and hopelessness. But it's the experience of a roller coaster ride compared to the fun, safe games of a midway. The developers did an incredible job in so many areas here that it's hard to find a lot of fault. The graphics are intense, the soundscape is hard to match, while the overall story being told isn't anything groundbreaking, and there's certainly areas and events that are predictable. It does feel like they built successfully atop the storyline of the movies believably and respectfully. Of course, recommending a game like this is tough. It's basically like sending someone into a really long haunted house, and that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Personally, I tend to go through a phase every Halloween and play through creepy stuff like this. It's become a bit of a tradition for me. If you've never played anything like this and you want to give it a try, Alien Isolation, in my opinion, is one of the best experiences in this genre, at least for now. I'm also planning to cover some other spooky options here on the channel as well, so be sure to keep an eye out. But as always, I appreciate your time with me here today. Thanks for watching.